Now, there is two ways to see the world of Little Nightmares. Either you see the world of Little Nightmares through the eye of a child and how they see the world, especially when they're so tiny, how big and scary everything seems to them from their point of view. Do you remember how everything looked when you were so tiny that everything was scary? But that's not the theory we're gonna explain. This is not why we're here. We're here to find out what really is going on in Little Nightmares. Now, the first thing we gotta talk about is the most important thing of it all, and that's the eye. The significance of the eye. What is the eye in the world of Little Nightmares? Why is it everywhere? What does it represent? Well, let's talk about that. The eye in Little Nightmares, in the world of Little Nightmares, the eye is the world in which nobody can see. It is past the veil. It is on the other side, which is unseen, but is the world itself. And the thing is, the world itself is this creature. And let's talk about the story of what actually happens for all this to be. Okay, so the story starts out somewhere in the 1930s, 1920s, 1930s. A cosmic entity from basically the Lovecraftian universe. A cosmic entity comes to Earth and makes Earth his feeding ground slash breeding ground. And that's how the story begins, and that's what transforms the whole story. Is based on Lovecraftian cosmic horror, which is basically the fear of the unknown, and it says it all over. As you can tell, a lot of the main characters in Little Nightmares have their eyes covered or are covered themselves, representing a childish way to have a cloth of protection, covering their eyes from the real or covering themselves from being seen. It's all about seeing or being seen. That's part of the fear of the unknown. Fear of the unknown. To not see or whatever. You can't see the unseen, yet somehow you know it's there. Now, in typical and traditional Lovecraftian horror, which is based on the unknown, which that all you cannot see is the unknown, and the fear of all you can't see. A lot of parts of the story are with light. You need light, as in you become a Lucifer in a way, that you need to light the way in which you need to go, because everything is shrouded in darkness, and it's the darkness itself that creates the fear. And by not seeing, you might actually die. So, as an alien life form that comes from the unknown universe and controls Earth, he needs to sustain his life, and to sustain his life, he can't let Earth die, but yet he must feed. Therefore, in a way, he becomes a puppeteer. He's using all of humanity as puppets, and they're all controlled through him. They're all controlled through him and his twisted understanding of what exactly life as a human is. So, the eye, the creature, the all-seeing eye, is controlling all of humanity in a way it thinks humanity lives. Puppets. That's what they are, a bunch of puppets. Humanity are the puppets. They are all the creature. They are all the eyes, being kept alive for sustenance. Being kept alive for sustenance through control, through an alien being that does not understand what everything in the human life means. It just understands that they need to eat and they do certain things, so it keeps repeating that empty loop, pretending. It's a pretender. It's a pretender of human life, a pretender. We're all puppets. Now the cosmic creature controls everything on Earth, possibly everything on Earth, but we only see a little bit. Pretending like people would live their normal lives, yet everything is really falling apart. The whole world is not what it used to be. And for some reason, from some unknown reason, children are not affected by this great puppeteer. Only the adults lose their humanity and are kept alive in twisted ways to feed the entity, possibly forever, all the way to the end. So here in the Pale City, all the humans that are left are in a destroyed dystopian world controlled by an entity they could not see, being manipulated, alive and suffering, but puppeteered in a way they can't even control it. And uncontrollably and eventually and inevitable death, because they're being controlled and are suffering. In this world, every creature that is not a puppet is kept not being a puppet for a reason. They're kept being a prisoner to serve a specific purpose. Now, some of them cannot handle the purpose and opt out, but as we know, whoever you are and whatever tasks you have to accomplish, you will be easily replaced eventually by someone else. And as you could tell here, he's a thin, long man. That is reminiscence of Little Nightmares 2 and the thin, long man. So in one hand, we have Mona. Mona, the child who is meant to be the next dreamer, the next holder of the dream, of the signal that maintains this reality in its form. Fun fact, Mona is an audio sound, is a mix of all sounds mixed together into a single signal, and throughout the game you keep collecting the digital remains, the glitches you would say, of the children who die, and you keep converting them into one, gaining their experiences and thoughts. And at the end, you become the signal, the new dreamer to maintain the Dreamlands. The tower, the beacon that controls all this reality. And just like Six is attracted to the mono, our sound wave is attracted to the tower, the beacon of the reality, of the mind control signal. In the Lovecraftian mythos, there is something known as the Dreamlands, where everything is a dream. They're inside a dream that imitates life. A dream where nothing is quite what it seems. Everything seems to be imitating what reality is in a twisted, dark way and a dream. But there needs to be a dreamer. There needs to be a dreamer. One to control the world. One to know what the world should look like. And in the world of Little Nightmares, you will find some creatures that are not fully puppets. They're puppets in a way, but they retain their humanity in a way. Because they know. And they know because they need to know. They need to have the skills to remember, to shape the world, to complete the task. They're prisoners. They're prisoners of the entity. And they know they're prisoners, but the reason they're different kind of puppets is because they need to know. They need to push forward. They know what the entity doesn't know. To walk among the world and complete tasks for the entity. And when one of them dies, they could easily be replaced. Easily, because that's what children do. They're easy replacements. Easy replacements for those who serve the entity. And when one is gone, another shall rise in its place, because there needs to be an order to this dream. As I was saying about the Dreamlands, the characters itself seem to have a way of premonition, to predict, and in a way, if anything goes wrong, they shall wake up as if it was a premonition, like it was a repeating dream, a looping dream meant to protect them from harm. As in, if something wrong is gonna happen, they will see it and kind of evade it before it actually happens. And like a dream, a lot of things will seem real, but they will make no sense. And the people in that world turn into scary, mad, like a nightmare. And all these people are trapped and suffering through the puppeteering of the entity. But on the other side, the whole point of taking Earth is not only to feed. At the same time, it's a nursery for the entity's children. And yes, that's what the story's about. Not only the children of human that seem to be immune to the entity, but it's a ground to breed. And here's where our story of our character begins. And all the way back, in Little Nightmares 1, it's clear as day when you first start the game. There she is. In the middle of the eye, the daughter, the next one in line, the descendant, with her little yellow hood representing the eye itself. Everything was clear from the beginning. You just need to see what's right in front of you. The child of the entity, and Earth created for its development and growth, so it could become one day the successor or the next cosmic horror. Earth is a nursery, and the entity is trying to raise its child. And we play as 6. We play as 6, as in the 6th one. The 6th child. The one that all hope is put on now to grow in this world. And she seems to be running away. She seems to be running away from this dark faith. As in she knows something is wrong, but she can't quite put her finger on it. And she runs. She might just be able to see the reality we can't see. So this is what you gotta understand. It's a nursery. It's a nursery. It's not only a feeding ground, it's a nursery. It's a place to nourish and grow the child of the entity, which just so happens to be 6, the 6th one. And this place which she keeps getting attracted to and ending up, it's a place that is meant for her to grow. Okay, I'm gonna take you back all the way to the beginning, to the actual very first game of Little Nightmares, called Very Little Nightmares. And in Very Little Nightmares, all the way at the beginning, the place where you first find 6 is called the Nest. And 6 seems to be escaping the nest. What's interesting to me is that the little girl that's the owner of the nest, like the main character of the nest that everybody's taking care of, seems to be a princess in a way. And she's called the Pretender, and she's obviously in a disguise, and it's, in my opinion, that's supposed to be 6. 6 is supposed to be the princess. 6. And that's the nest. That's the nest where the babies are born. And it seems like all the babies, all the children of the eye, of the entity, have powers. And the Pretender is pretending. The name says it. She's pretending, not because she's a pretender, but because she's a pretender of, she's pretending to be the person she's not. So in a way, Earth is created into a giant nursery and surrounded by puppets and people who are enslaved. People who are enslaved in this giant nursery to serve the will of the cosmic being, the entity. So the place known as the Maw is a place where people are fattened up and are indoctrinated like cattle to serve the greater purpose of feeding the newborn infant of the entity. And everybody has a task they must achieve, a path they have to follow for the order and the child to grow up, because this is a world perpetuated by the entity. And everyone here either is a slave, a puppet, a slave, a prisoner, all for the growth of 6. To serve in many different ways so they could raise this child in an Earth-like environment. As in, this is a good place for me to raise a child. And Earth was taken, and some people were enslaved to serve that purpose. Now, when Mono first finds 6, he finds her in the basement of the Hunter, and she seems to be playing her traditional theme song, her nursery rhyme, and you break her out. And she seems to be afraid of you. But there is a reason why the hunter kept her alive. As in, the hunter knew what she really was to begin with. And the other thing about the hunter itself, the thing about the hunter itself is that the hunter seems to be aware of everything that's going on. Either he's far away from the signal, or somehow he's not affected by everything. Yet, somehow he got deformed and lost his body and is trying to imitate what he was back then. Trying to get food and survive and create his own little life. Setting traps not only to catch food, but also setting traps to protect itself from the puppets that may come to get him. So in a way, the hunter is kind of like out of the loop in his own thing, creating his own fictional reality. So just like Mono is attracted to the tower because that is what he was bred for, and that's where he belongs, to be the next Thin Man. 6 is always attracted to the Maw, saying like that's her place, and they all were bred to have a specific place to rule over Earth like an alien invasion. They all generals of the army of the Eye, and they all have a place and a purpose, and they're all attracted and they're bred in the nest of the Eye for their purpose. Eventually, Mono reaches the door, the signal, through his power of channeling into the frequency, and eventually opens the door that's been calling him and unleashes the actual tower itself and the dreamer, the signal. Six pulls him out before he is fully captured, but the Thin Man comes to complete his mission, which is basically to bring Six back. He channels through. The Thin Man captures Six, leaving a glitch remain, or a signal. The next time we see her in her true form, back in her mother's embrace. So at the end of Mono's journey, our monophonic sound wave carrier follows sound itself to guide through the maze of the unseen world. And in that world, he finds that the nursery the mother created for our protagonist. And we see her finally in her true form. There's her picture in the back with her face scratched, because that's a lie. And there we have her in her true glory, in the nursery, playing her nursery rhyme. What's funny about this is that in true Lovecraftian way, she resembles the Lovecraftian most popular child of them all, which is Cthulhu himself, with the tentacles dripping down her face, which in this case is her hair. And Mono, our hero, tasked to destroy the corrupting sound wave. And at the end, after he breaks down through all the doors of Six's subconscious, he finally reaches the sound box itself and is able to destroy the sound that is nurturing her into the beast she's becoming. And that's when we break the illusion and see the mother of all reality itself, the creature all around us, the world, the reality, broken through the illusion of the sound wave, the eye. Now, when we reach this fatal part in the story, it has come to my understanding that Six finally realizes that Mono has been part of that world all along, and he's always been there, basically completing his task. And either she decides to destroy him or to accept that that is his place in this world. So you see, Six realizes that Mono has always been taking her to the tower since the beginning. That was his purpose. That even if he didn't want to or he didn't know it, he's part of it all. And he was taking her to the tower all along, and she comes to that realization where he's part of it. Even if he doesn't know it, he was channeling the Thin Man all along to catch Six. He was always attracted to the signal, and he was taking Six backwards towards danger instead of away. So at the end of our journey, we realize the truth. The world is controlled by a Lovecraftian horror entity, come to the world to make its nesting ground and feeding ground. And Mono, at the end of the journey, has to face the truth and the fact that the only way he could possibly survive in this world is to accept being manipulated and accept his role in this world. Because as long as you have a purpose in the entity's plan, you may live on, but you will have to live with that. So here we are at the end of the story, and I thank you for watching, if indeed you still are. And I ask you this question: are we just puppets being manipulated for some unseen entity ourselves? I love Little Nightmares. I love the story. I love everything about it, and I hope to see more in the future. I wish the studio the best, and I thank you all for watching and sticking through my story. Thank you guys, and I'll see you next time.